Two children, born into the same family and raised under the same roof, are being prepared for two completely different futures. Prince George is being shaped for the throne, while Princess Charlotte's role will follow a different path entirely. The details behind that divide reveal how early the royal road starts being decided. For most of their childhood, George and Charlotte have looked from the outside like a matching set. Same school run, same balcony appearances, same Christmas card. But 2026 is the year that stopped being true, and it started with a letter. Prince George has turned 13 and is set to begin studying at Eton College this fall, marking a major milestone for the heir. That's not a detail. That's the whole story right there in one sentence. Eton isn't just a school. This coming school year will prove another milestone for George, who will follow in William's footsteps in September by attending Eton College, a boys' boarding school located near Windsor Castle. And he's expected to board, since Eton College does not have day students. Board, not commute board. That word alone tells you everything about where George's life is headed compared to his sister's. He's leaving the house. Charlotte isn't going anywhere. She's staying put. Same school, same routine, same day-to-day life she's had since she was small. And that's not an accident. It's the first hard physical proof that these two kids are on separate tracks now, not just in title but in daily reality. Here's how we got to this exact moment. George was set to begin school wherever the family chose in September 2026, when he turned 13, after attending Lambrook School in Berkshire, along with Charlotte and Louis. All three kids, same school, since 2022. That was the last stretch where their lives ran parallel. Then the paperwork started. Eton College students are between the ages of 13 and 18, but they must be registered before June 30 of the school year, when the boy turns 10. After that, the only route of entry is through scholarships or sixth form entry, which means this decision wasn't made this year. It was made years ago, quietly, while George and Charlotte were still small enough that nobody was thinking about the split yet. William and Kate looked at a 10-year-old and had to decide, right then, that his life would look nothing like his sister's by the time he hit his teens. And the palace didn't exactly confirm it loudly. A source told the Mail on Sunday that after Prince William and Kate Middleton explored a variety of options for their eldest son, all roads lead to Eton, with insiders describing a kind of smugness about the pending announcement, and George had already been spotted visiting Eton with his parents in 2023. That visit in 2023 is worth sitting with. Charlotte wasn't part of it. It was George, alone with his parents, being walked around the grounds of a school built for one specific kind of future, his Prince George. The eldest child of Prince William and Kate, the Princess of Wales, is now a teenager, and second in line to the British throne, having celebrated his 13th birthday. Second in line, not third. That number is the entire reason the school hunt looked the way it did. Then, this past summer, it stopped being a rumor. Prince George turned 13 and was set to begin studying at Eton College this fall, with Kensington Palace releasing a new photo of him captioned "Happy 13th Birthday, George." No mention of Charlotte in that announcement. No joint photo, just George, alone in the frame, stepping into the next phase. But here's where it gets interesting. The palace didn't want the world to actually know where he was going. Even after they'd confirmed Eton, palace aides reportedly told reporters that even confirming the choice publicly in detail could create problems, given senior royal aides and education advisors say the Waleses have decided even confirming the choice could trigger security vulnerabilities, especially as the family continues to navigate public appearances after Kate's lengthy recovery from her cancer scare, and William's training to take the throne from his ill father, King Charles. A palace security source put it bluntly: the alert over George's safety is real, and it's serious. Threat monitoring spiked the moment discussions about George's next school began circulating. That's why the family is determined to keep the location under wraps. Threat monitoring spiking over a school choice. That's not a sentence anyone would ever write about Charlotte's school. And that gap between a child whose education requires threat assessments and a child whose doesn't is the clearest, earliest signal of just how differently these two futures are shaping up. One sibling is being treated like a state asset. The other is being treated like, well, a kid. Even the mundane parts of George's life now come dressed in extra caution. Insiders describe him testing boundaries the way any teenager does, but with a twist only a future king gets. A royal insider said, "It's a significant year for George," as he heads into his teens, and he's already testing a few limits, just as William recently hinted, adding that the decision about his next school has already been made. But security risks mean it is being kept well under wraps until every possible scenario has been given dry runs by the Royal Protection Squad. Dry runs for a 13-year-old's commute to school. That's the reality George is walking into, and Charlotte simply isn't. There's also a colder, more procedural piece of this that most people don't think about until it's spelled out for them. Royal protocol reportedly dictates that this is the year when William and George, both heirs to the throne, will no longer be able to travel together via plane to prevent catastrophe to the line of succession should something tragic happen. No such rule exists for Charlotte. She can fly with her dad her whole life without anyone blinking. George can't. Not anymore. That's not a metaphor for the different paths. It's a literal, written-down rule that only applies to one sibling. So by the time George blew out 13 candles, the split wasn't a prediction anymore. It was a school uniform, a boarding house, a security review, and a plane ticket rule. Everything from here forward builds on that foundation. How George's path keeps tightening around the crown, and how Charlotte's path is opening up into something nobody expected either of them to have, a title of her own. If part 1 was about the moment the paths visibly split, this part is about the machinery already running underneath it, the years of quiet training that turned a boy into the heir long before he ever packed a trunk for boarding school. Royal watchers have been blunt about it for a while now. Prince George is already preparing for his role as the heir apparent. That's not speculation dressed up as fact. That's the framing royal correspondents use plainly, because the preparation has been visible in public for years. Take the VE Day anniversary. This wasn't a family outing. It was a deliberate solo placement. On the 80th anniversary of VE Day, Prince George attended a tea party for veterans with his parents, without siblings Charlotte and Louis. Charlotte and Louis stayed home. George didn't. Former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond explained exactly why that mattered, telling reporters that it may be the only opportunity George will ever have of speaking to men and women who served their king and country during the war. But Bond went further, and this is where the real substance of George's future job title comes into focus. She said it's a lesson that will serve him well in the future, because one day he will be Chief of the Armed Forces himself, and he may well look back at some of those conversations and be glad that he had the chance to meet some of the few remaining veterans. Chief of the Armed Forces. That's a real functioning role George is being lined up for, not a ceremonial nickname, an actual position with actual responsibilities tied to the crown. And it explains why a tea party for elderly veterans was treated less like an outing and more like a training session. George wasn't there to be polite. He was there to learn what Charlotte, structurally, will never need to learn, because that job isn't hers to inherit. This is the through line of George's whole childhood, actually. Moments that look like family appearances but function as apprenticeship. In June, Kensington Palace shared that Kate and George stepped out for a joint engagement at RAF Coningsby, a Royal Air Force base in honor of Armed Forces Day, and several months earlier, in December, George joined William at the Passage, a London-based charity supporting people experiencing homelessness, to help prepare the organization's annual Christmas lunch. Notice the pattern: Air Force Base, homelessness charity, veterans tea. These aren't random outings of parent picks for a kid. They're a curriculum. George is being walked, engagement by engagement, through the exact set of institutions a king eventually has to understand: the military, the charitable sector, the working poor, the armed forces chain of command. Charlotte's public schedule doesn't run on that same syllabus because she's not the one who's going to need it. And then there's the succession math itself, which is the actual legal backbone of everything else in this story. Prince William is the heir apparent. meaning he is legally entitled to succeed the monarch. And at the end of King Charles' reign, William would automatically become king. Only after William's reign would Prince George inherit the crown, provided the order of succession remains unchanged. That's the whole ladder. Charles, then William, then George. Not Charlotte. Never Charlotte, barring something catastrophic happening to both her father and her brother. And that fact shapes literally every decision being made about George right now, from the school he attends to the countries he's allowed to fly into, to the veterans he's introduced to before they're gone. The Eton decision fits into that ladder perfectly, because it's the same school that built the last two men who held George's exact position. A new report claims he'll follow in Dad Prince William's footsteps at the Prince of Wales' alma mater, Eton College. And it's not just William's school. This coming school year will prove another milestone for George, who will follow in William's footsteps in September by attending Eton College. 2 generations of heirs, same hallways, same houses, same traditions, groomed the exact same way. The security conversation around George isn't just about school location either. It stretches into his entire adult life, permanently. Once he's an adult heir with his own household, the protection scales up again. The travel restrictions solidify. The plane rule becomes permanent rather than a "this is the year it starts" milestone. It's a slow ratchet that only tightens, never loosens, for as long as he's next in line. There's also something almost claustrophobic about how public George's private milestones have become. His birthday isn't just a birthday. Prince George has now entered his teenage era, and Kensington Palace released a new photo of the heir to the throne, with the caption, "Happy 13th birthday, George." A photo The Times reported was taken by Matt Porteous at Kensington Palace shortly after the Trooping of the Colour. Compare that to how the palace even frames the picture stylistically. The BBC noted the photo was more formal than last year's photo, which was taken in a countryside setting in Norfolk. Read that again. The palace is visibly, deliberately escalating the formality of George's official portraits year over year, as if dialing him in like a slider. Casual field photo at 12, formal portrait at 13, as though prepping the public, frame by frame, for the man who'll eventually be photographed on a coin. That's not something that happens to Charlotte's birthday photos. Hers stay soft, playful, domestic. His are being aged up on purpose. And underneath all of it sits the framing every royal commentator keeps returning to when they talk about George specifically. He is, as one outlet put it, the most normal future monarch Britain has ever had, a phrase that on its face sounds reassuring, but actually reveals the tension at the heart of his whole childhood. He's being raised to seem ordinary, while every single institutional lever around him, the school, the security detail, the travel rule, the formal portraits, the veteran meetings, treats him as anything but. That's George's road. Locked in from birth, tightening every year, aimed at one single job that only he can hold. Which is exactly why what's happening to his sister looks so different. Because for the first time, Charlotte's future isn't about waiting in his shadow. It's about carving out a lane nobody in the family has had to build from scratch in almost 40 years. Here's the part that surprises people. Charlotte isn't just not the heir. She's quietly being lined up for a completely separate, very real title of her own. One that has nothing to do with waiting around for George. It starts with her great-aunt. Princess Charlotte has reportedly undergone a royal crash course with Princess Anne to prepare her for her future role within the royal family. Not a photo op, a crash course, the kind of phrase that implies actual instruction, actual content being passed down, not just posing for cameras together. The prize at the end of that instruction is a title that's existed since the 17th century and has only ever been held by 7 women in British history. This is the lifelong rank of Princess Royal, a position currently occupied by Charlotte's great-aunt, Princess Anne, an honorary title customarily bestowed on the monarch's eldest daughter, and the highest honor that can be given to a female member of the royal family. Only one person can hold it at a time, and it doesn't pass down automatically. Only one person can hold the title of the Princess Royal at a time, meaning Charlotte can only receive it after Princess Anne's passing, and she may choose not to accept it. Daily Mail royal editor Richard Eden laid out the mechanics of it directly on the Palace Confidential podcast, explaining that, traditionally, the Princess Royal would be the eldest daughter of the monarch. So when William becomes king, it is likely that Princess Charlotte, if Princess Anne is dead, may be our future Princess Royal. Notice the conditional, stacked on conditional. William has to be king, and Anne has to have died before Charlotte can even be offered the job. That's a title built entirely on timing she has zero control over, and even then, it's optional. Eden added that Charlotte doesn't necessarily have to accept the title, should it one day be offered, saying she could do who knows. But the groundwork for it is being laid right now, while Anne is still very much alive and working. Royal author Simon Vigars reporting frames it as something bigger than just a hand-me-down title. It's genuinely modeling her behavior on Anne's. Commentator Phil Dampier has drawn the comparison directly, noting Charlotte's temperament already echoes her great aunt's. Even the late Queen apparently clocked the resemblance early. Queen Elizabeth seems to have taken an interest in George and Charlotte's dynamic and made a candid comment about it in 2018, reportedly replying, "It's like that with Charlotte and George," after hearing that a younger sister looked after her big sister. That's Elizabeth II spotting the Anne and Charles dynamic replaying itself a generation later in real time at a family gathering. Princess Anne and King Charles are also said to have had this kind of relationship when they were children, which means Charlotte isn't just inheriting a possible title someday. She may be stepping into an entire family role that's repeated itself across generations. The sharp, capable sister who keeps her royal brother in line. Anne herself is the template for exactly how seriously that job gets taken. Princess Anne was made Princess Royal in 1987 when she was 36, and she's now amassed plenty of experience. There have only been 7 Princess Royals so far, and Anne is widely regarded as one of the most hard-working members of the royal family, praised for her no-nonsense attitude and commitment to the firm. That's the bar Charlotte is being quietly measured against years before anyone expects her to actually take the job. And it's not the only title floating around for her. Royal biographer Robert Jobson has floated a second option entirely, one that doesn't require anyone else to die first. He told Hello Magazine that I was told the king wanted to reserve the Duchess of Edinburgh role for her, which could happen. That title currently belongs to Sophie, wife of Prince Edward, and like the Princess Royal title, it would only free up once its current holder passes it along. Currently, Prince Edward's wife, Sophie, holds the title of Duchess of Edinburgh, but once Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, dies, the dukedom will revert to the crown, making it possible for Princess Charlotte to be given the Duchess title one day in her own right. 2 separate titles, floated by 2 separate royal insiders, both requiring someone else's death, both entirely optional, and neither of them anywhere close to the throne. That's Charlotte's lane in a nutshell. Real, prestigious, historically loaded, and completely disconnected from the crown itself. There's a darker layer to this apprenticeship too, one that goes beyond ceremony and protocol. Sources close to the family have described the preparation as touching on genuinely heavy material. Princess Charlotte is already receiving a crash course in royal protocol from her great-aunt Princess Anne, as she prepares for a future role that could include inheriting the Princess Royal title, a position that carries with it centuries of responsibility and ceremonial expectation. One insider went further, describing the content of those lessons bluntly. Kate has done a great job guiding her, but Anne's expertise as the Princess Royal is irreplaceable. Charlotte is receiving instruction from the absolute best. However, these are basically succession lessons for when Princess Anne departs. So the little one is essentially being schooled on huge issues for a young mind, including death and international responsibilities that come with being a member of the royals. Death and international responsibility taught to an 11-year-old so that a title can be ready to hand over the moment its current owner passes. That's not a fairy tale princess narrative. That's succession planning with a body count built into the paperwork. However uncomfortable that sounds, It's the actual mechanism by which most royal titles change hands. Compare all of that to George's timeline. His future job is already guaranteed the moment his father dies. No waiting on a great-aunt. No if she chooses to accept it. No competing title options floated by different biographers. Charlotte's future is a menu. George's is a single, locked-in entree that's been on order since the day he was born. That's the real shape of the split laid bare. Not just school buildings and security details, but two entirely different relationships to the concept of earning a role. George doesn't have to earn his, it's his by blood, full stop. Charlotte's future titles are conditional on other people's lifespans, other people's choices, and ultimately her own willingness to accept them. One future is fixed, the other is a possibility, dressed up in centuries-old ceremony, waiting for its moment. So if George's path is locked and Charlotte's is conditional, what's actually holding the two of them together while all of this plays out around them? The answer, according to nearly everyone who's studied this family closely, is Charlotte herself. She's been given a specific label by people who've watched her operate at royal events for years. Charlotte has been called the glue among her siblings. Not George, not Louis Charlotte, the one in the middle age-wise holding the whole unit together. People magazine's reporting around her 10th birthday spelled out exactly what that means in practice. In a cover story about Charlotte surrounding the occasion of her 10th birthday, people referred to Charlotte as the glue of the siblings, level-headed and often a calming influence, while George, meanwhile, is described as shy, and Louis, as evidenced during the trio's surprise appearance at VE Day commemorations, as carefree. 3 kids, 3 completely different temperaments, and it's the middle child, the one with no direct claim to the throne, who's apparently doing the emotional heavy lifting for the family. Even a children's wear designer who spent time around the princess picked up on the same pattern. Amaya Arrieta, who's met Charlotte multiple times, told people, "I think George will always be able to rely on her," before drawing a direct line to the Anne and Charles model, adding, "Much like Princess Anne to King Charles, she will be dependable and a great asset to him." That comparison keeps surfacing because it's not just a compliment. It's an actual functional prediction of how the family expects the sibling dynamic to run. Once George is king and Charlotte is, whatever title she ends up with, standing next to him rather than under him. But there's a harder edge underneath all the warmth, and it's the one royal author, Simon Viguier, has been the most blunt about. He spent time thinking specifically about what happens to the sibling who isn't the heir. Once the crown actually changes hands, when Prince William becomes king, his eldest son, Prince George, will become the heir apparent. And when George finally exceeds the throne, his siblings will take on new roles within the royal family. But according to Viguier, it's imperative that Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis are allowed to carve out their own roles. Viguier didn't just make that observation in passing. He's built an entire argument around it, tied to his research into royal family dynamics across generations. Speaking on Hello's A Right Royal podcast, he said plainly, "There has to be a better way of doing this," adding, "There must be a way that Charlotte and Louis can support their brother in the decades to come and still have their own lives." That phrase, "still have their own lives," is doing a lot of work. It's an admission that under the current system, supporting the monarch has historically meant not having your own life. And everybody in this conversation knows exactly which royal represents the cautionary tale. For what happens when that support role goes wrong? Prince Harry wrote an entire memoir warning about it. Prince Harry wrote his memoir Spare to protect his brother's children, acknowledging that at least one of them will likely end up in a similar position as him, as a spare to the heir. That's not outside commentary, that's Harry himself, looking at his niece and nephews and recognizing his own old job description waiting for one of them. People's cover story treated this as the central tension of Charlotte's entire childhood, framing her 10th birthday explicitly around the question of what comes next for the sibling who isn't first in line. There are thorny questions ahead for Charlotte and her parents as they navigate the complexities of her unique position. Being the spare to Prince George, the future heir, is a vulnerable place, one fraught with potential pitfalls that her uncle Prince Harry, who also grew up as the Spare, has made all too clear. Royal biographer Robert Hardman, who wrote The Making of a King, went even further back in history to explain why this particular seat at the table has always been the hardest one in the family to hold. He told people that the late Queen was always very conscious of that extraordinary and challenging role of the number 2, and explained exactly why that awareness ran so deep for Elizabeth personally. That's why she had a particular soft spot for her sister Margaret, for her son Andrew and Harry. She understood being second place in a strictly hierarchical family and institution has its challenges, he said, adding, "Everyone is conscious of that." Margaret, Andrew, Harry, 3 generations of royals who all carried the exact weight Charlotte is now being prepared to carry, and none of whom, by most public accounts, found it easy. That's the family history sitting underneath every Glue of the Siblings headline written about Charlotte. A pattern that hasn't yet produced a clean, happy outcome for anyone who's held that specific spot, which is precisely why William and Kate's parenting approach has been described repeatedly as a deliberate correction. Parenting expert Joe Frost has said the couple actively avoid the language that's caused problems in past generations. Frost has emphasized that William and Middleton prioritize nurturing sibling relationships among their children, focusing on teamwork and the significance of each child's role in supporting the monarchy, rather than labeling them as heir and spare, telling, "Hello, we're seeing these very early seeds now, with respect to what it means to support each other and to nurture together." Former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond has made a similar point about the balance William and Kate are trying to strike. Bond stated that the Prince and Princess of Wales aim to make their youngest children feel as valued as Prince George, while leading normal lives and having options beyond royal duties, emphasizing their modern approach to parenting and ensuring Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis feel special and loved. So the family is trying visibly to avoid repeating the Margaret, Andrew, Harry pattern. But trying and succeeding aren't the same thing, and the structural reality hasn't actually changed. Charlotte and Louis would still be considered spares, as they are not expected to inherit the throne. No amount of careful language changes the succession order underneath it. There's an old, blunt line about exactly this dynamic that's followed the family for decades. The moment Charles reportedly told Diana on the day Harry was born, "Now you've given me an heir and a spare. My work is done." That comment is decades old now, but it's the exact frame Vigor and Hardman are both explicitly trying to argue William and Kate need to move past with their own 3 kids. Which brings the story to where things actually stand today. Not a resolved question, but an open one that the family is still actively working out in real time. So where does all of this actually leave George and Charlotte? Right now, at 13 and 11. George's road is finished being decided. It was decided years ago, really, the moment he was registered for Eton before he'd even turned 10. And every headline since then has just been the world catching up to a decision that already existed on paper. No official word had come out on it for a while, but the decision was always expected to be made that summer, so an announcement was likely imminent. That imminent announcement came. The boarding house is waiting. The security dry runs are happening, and by the time this school year is out, George will be living somewhere his sister isn't. Charlotte's road, by contrast, is still being drafted in real time by multiple people with competing ideas about what it should even look like. Jobson's floating the Duchess of Edinburgh option. Eden and others are pointing toward Princess Royal. Anne is still teaching the crash course. Nobody, not the palace, not the biographers, not seemingly Charlotte's own parents, has actually settled on the final version of her future yet. As for when Charlotte receives a title, there's no set time. That open-endedness is, in its own way, the most honest answer to the question this whole story keeps circling. George's future was never really his to shape. It was assigned to him by birth order, locked in by legal succession, and now being physically built around him, one boarding house and one security briefing at a time. Charlotte's future is still genuinely a live conversation, It might end with a tiara and a centuries-old title. It might end with her turning it down entirely, the way Eden suggested she's allowed to. Nobody, including the family, actually knows yet. What both paths share, though, is the thing everyone from Jenny Bond to Simon Vigar to Robert Hardman keeps circling back to: the hope that this generation does it differently than the last one did. That George gets to be, as one report put it, the most normal future monarch the country has ever had. While still carrying a job, no amount of normal childhood can fully soften. And that Charlotte gets to be more than just the answer to a question about who supports the king. That whatever title eventually lands on her, Princess Royal or Duchess of Edinburgh or something else entirely, it's hers, chosen and shaped on her own terms, not just handed down as compensation for not being the one born first. Right now, that's still a hope more than a settled fact. The school trunks are being packed for one sibling and not the other. The security details are scaling up for one and staying steady for the other. The titles are still unassigned, still conditional, still waiting on the lifespans and choices of people decades older than either of these kids. Two very different futures still being written for two siblings who, by every account from the people who actually watch them together, genuinely like each other enough to want to get this right.